I know for me, I will keep a promise to anyone else and sometimes not keep a promise to myself. So it's quite literally knowing you're going to keep a promise to yourself is self-respect. And I think very much that if you build up that muscle, if you set yourself up for success, to have that self-respect and set yourself up to win, that, I mean, why not hack something so that you can build on that?
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is my friend, Mandy McAllister, who's going to share how to live an abundant life. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. I have a story to share today. In ancient times, a king had his men place a boulder on a roadway. He then hid in the bushes and watched to see if anyone would move the boulder out of the way. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers passed by, simply walked around it. The people blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but not one of them did anything about getting the stone removed. One day, a peasant came along carrying vegetables. On approaching the boulder, the peasant laid down his burden and tried to push the stone out of the way. After much pushing and straining, he finally managed. After the peasant went back to pick up his vegetables, he noticed a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king explaining that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the road. That is still true today. People who solve problems and move boulders get the gold. Think about how can you help the world solve its biggest problems, and you will be well rewarded. Speaking of taking action, last week's action step was to examine our habits and ask, are they serving us? Then stop doing the ones that don't serve you. I know this is so easy to say, but as always, hard to do. It also creates more time so you can help other people move their boulders. That's one of the things Tony Robbins is famous for. Helping people remove the mental scripts that hold us down. And he does it in an instant. It's like the switch going off and allowing you to immediately start to achieve success. I met Mandy at a Tony Robbins event years ago. And my wife is amazing at following up with people and keeping everyone in connection. Mandy's going to join us today to share her inspiring message for women. She has great tips on finding your purpose and also how to look at opportunities differently. Lots of great insights around improving yourself and a little bit about real estate. Mandy McAllister is a multifamily real estate investor, mindset ninja, eternal learner, coach, and dot connector. Her passion is to help others define their path to financial freedom through syndications, coaching, and her platform, Aspiring Women Achieving More. Let's meet her. Welcome to Richer Soul, Mandy McAllister. It's great to have you join us today.
So pleased to be here, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
And I am excited to learn from you and learn more about your journey. Before we get to that, we like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
So I grew up on a farm. So to say that I knew hard work in a kind of built-in type of way was kind of goes without saying. But both my parents, because my dad farmed, my mom was also an entrepreneur. So both my parents were self-employed. So that's always just kind of, I guess, why it was in my blood. And because my dad was just paid once a year when he sold his grain, the way that he worked it with his accountant is he gave my brother and me kind of a set amount of cash for the year. And we were required to basically balance our needs from like fourth grade, whatever school clothes, and if you wanted to play a sport. And clearly they helped us out, but there was a lot of learning from an early age like that.
And it sounds to me, when you get all your money in one lump sum, you really need to learn how to dole it out over time and how to kind of budget through all of that. That must have been interesting.
Well, as a fourth grader, if you want to play a sport that traveled, then you kind of have to think about it. So I'll tell you, there were mistakes, and I think it was the best possible sort of training wheels. And I'm trying to dream up an idea. I have a 5-year-old. I'm trying to dream up how I can, help him learn money in a similar way that wasn't, because I don't have the built-in go feed the cows and we're going to write it off on the taxes by paying you a lump sum. So
we gave our kids an allowance, and I know there's back and forth on whether or not you should give your kids an allowance. But what it did was we did it intentionally because they need money to be able to learn how to use money, right? You can't just talk about it. And so the allowance gave them money without having to worry about, did you do your chores? And then you create all these money mindsets and bad money vibes. So we just gave it to them. I think the thing I would add in the future is I would give them their base money, and I would give them opportunities to earn extra money so that they'd have the option to do that. And then from their money, you make them take responsibility for some of the things you want to do. So if soccer's $50, clearly the kid doesn't have 50, but he might have a couple. And so your cut for soccer is $5. Are you in? Yes or no?
I love it. Yeah.
It's the most hilarious thing. Cause you know how, and especially at 5, right? You try to get the kids to turn out the lights, save electricity, do the wise things. And I've done that my whole life. This weekend, I think, was the first time it sank in. It's because my daughter finally has her own apartment and she's paying for electricity. So she's yelling at me going, turn off the lights, please.
That is how parenting full circle brilliance is that. I'll say one more thing too, so I'm stealing this idea from a friend that she pays her kid to read these personal development books, child related ones. I love that idea, linking a reward with, becoming a better you. So I'm totally stealing that when the time comes.
And you know what? As we talked about paying them for additional things, that would be something that you could offer on top of. Hey, if you want extra money, here's one way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
So just out of curiosity, what did your mother do? You said she was an entrepreneur as well.
Mm-hmm. So she had a small gift manufacturing company. They made reproduction carousel horses, which sounds so left field niche off the wall. But so she didn't really have a sales force. So growing up, her sales force was her. And then when I was 17, 18, 19, she would fly me into these trade shows and I would help sell carousel horses in Javits Center for Toy Fair, So that's kind of how I cut my chops in business and sales. Cause my primary portion of my W-2 career has been in sales. So
everything in life comes down to sales. Whether it's getting a date or getting a job or getting your kid, your parents to buy you that Christmas gift, it's all sales. And it's a skill that we just don't teach enough of, I think, especially in school.
And I had sales courses in school with great professors, but so much of learning is still in sales. Like it's just a go figure it out type thing. There's so many tricks and there's so many learning from these giants of sales that, in this sort of personal development stuff we do, there's hacks,
That there are. Humans are very, what's the right word? We behave a certain way. And when you learn those psychological levers, then you can use them to your advantage. And being the most advertised people in the world, there are people spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to figure out exactly how those levers work and how they fit with their products to poke you to hand over your hard-earned money.
Right.
So it's always good to at least understand them so you know when you're being played. So we actually met at a Tony Robbins event years ago.
Yes, my very first UPW, actually. I got to sit near your sweet wife, Dolly, and had a couple of great shares with her. So love my Tony Robbins people.
It's a great networking place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you did business mastery, didn't you?
I did everything except business mastery.
So you went the other way. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but wealth mastery gets into a lot of stuff. So much of business mastery is Keith Cunningham. They dive pretty deeply into some key stuff in the wealth mastery too.
Okay. Well, and the reason I'd asked about business mastery is because I know that is mostly Keith Cunningham. And I love his book, The Road Less Stupid, which is learning from other people's mistakes instead of making our own. And for me, it was shocking. I just assumed business people were smarter about business. And the reality is they aren't. They make the same mistakes people make in their life. And now it all makes a lot of sense. And that's a big part of what Keith talks about, is figuring that all out.
Mm-hmm. And I think my favorite part of Keith, my favorite learning from Keith that I work into my daily, weekly life is this idea of thinking time. Get so busy in whatever minutia you're dealing with, you can dive deeper and have this, idea of busyness and this charade of look at all these things that I'm doing, but none of it's necessarily moving you in the right direction unless you're really thinking deeply about what needs to happen.
Well, and I think the first part of thinking time is actually deciding what you want and where you're going.
Right.
Because if you don't know what you want and where you're going, then you're going in circles. It doesn't matter how much time you're spending thinking until you've got direction, it becomes hard.
And this goes into that goal setting stuff that we've talked about previously. I mean, so the Alice in Wonderland quote, when Alice is talking to the Cheshire Cat, well, which way should I go? Well, where do you want to go? Well, I don't know. Then it doesn't matter where you go. If you don't know where you're going, if you don't know the North Star that's driving whatever effort that you've got, then you're not going to make the right step because you haven't defined the endpoint.
And that's very true. And I know in his book, at the end of every chapter, it's like it literally ends off, now go think. And he's got a ton of questions that you need to go think about as it relates to business. But it's the same thing is true in life as it is in business. It's the same thing that's true in parenting. You have to sit down. What are the outcomes you want for your child? What are the outcomes you want for yourself? What type of life do you want to live? And then you go think about how are you going to achieve it? And then it's also, are you on the right track? And what are the ways to do this? As you said, I think I see certain people are always busy, but they're not doing anything useful.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and they've done the exact same 1 year of work 20 times. They don't have 20 years experience. They have that 1 year of experience 20 times over because they're not trying anything different. They're not growing.
What is that movie? Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
I just watched a different version of it. It was something different, but the same concept. And it's a shame to go through every year as if nothing has changed.
I don't think everybody realizes, though, that there's an option, that you have a choice in what it is that you're doing, So what a great service you're doing by helping people realize that maybe there are other options.
There's a zillion options.
Yeah.
You just have to think about which one is right for you and does it fit you? I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding what your natural abilities and skills are and then where they intersect with the marketplace. It doesn't matter whether it's a job or whatever. You need to find the right place for you, because that is where you will thrive. And figuring that out requires thinking time. So I know you like to read, and I have to say, I think you outdo me, because how many books do you like to read a year?
Actually, in 2017, I made a goal. I was going to try to do a book a week. So 52 books. And come June, I had done all 52. So I decided to go for 100. I did like 107 that year. So I do roughly 100 books a year. It's all Audible because I drive around a bunch. And once you realize that you can crank up that speed a little bit, it's easy to churn through some stuff and really get some information, start to see some patterns between these big ideas.
And all the big ideas do have patterns. And it's I think that's where it comes back to, again, thinking time. Okay, here's a pattern that I've heard, the same story 10 different ways, but it's the same underlying pattern. How am I going to implement this for me in my life? And I know for me, that was a major struggle a long time ago, figuring out, okay, I understand this, like, so Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Okay, I understand we're supposed to do that. How do I do it with my skill set in my marketplace with my business? And that was something that really, really was a struggle. Now it's a no-brainer. But back then it was, how do you do it? So as you're reading all of these books, are there some main principles that keep popping up to you that you could share?
Yeah. So actually one of my favorites is this, deep work, introspection, thinking time concept. That is absolutely one of my very favorite, most impactful things. I actually just finished a book called A World Without Email, something like that, by Cal Newport. Mm-hmm. It's his new one. It's the follow-up to Deep Work, which is another one of my absolute favorites. And, end of the day, in this economy that we're in, that is so, brain focused, that your ability to go deep and really get some big thinking things done is your work product, what you bring to the world. And if you can set up your days, time block, and move things around as far as you can get more deep work done, there was a ton of really great hacks in the and strategies in that follow-up book. So if you have not read that, absolutely do.
I have not read that. I know that my number one goal right now is to conquer email. And I've been looking at a couple of different ways to do it. One of them was going to be hiring someone to read my email. Mm-hmm. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I've come to realize I don't need to hire someone to read my email. I just need to delete 95% of it. Yes.
Unsubscribe, filters. Like that's a big piece of it. But the kind of the crux of, and the thing that I was on a road trip this weekend, so I finished that book. So the thing that I'm going to work to put into my business and how I live my life is this idea of working on Trello type boards. If you haven't heard of Trello, or Asana, it's just like a project management type thing. And this idea of Scrum, if you haven't read Scrum, that's a really great one too, of having these short sprints of very focused work and batching out things that this is the stuff I'm going to work on. This is the stuff I am working on. And this is the stuff that's completed and needs to move forward. I actually just installed a 4-foot by 6-foot whiteboard here in my home office so that I can start batching out those types of things.
I think I do something similar on my Google Calendar. So when I have an automated calendar system, so people can book to do podcasts, do all these other things. But what I've done is more and more I've limited the time available for other people. And I'm continuing to limit that more. And there are certain days that you can't even book on. So we're continuing to do that. The second thing is every time I have a task that needs done that's not a 5-minute task, I literally go put it on my calendar on those open times. So I can look at, okay, there's a block. I'm just going to, I'll drop 10 tasks in there for that day. And then I focus on those then. And then I have certain days where I don't do other things, because if I have other things that I'm thinking in the back of my mind, they're preventing the deep work. And so when you have a deep work day, you don't schedule anything else, then you can just focus on doing that creative or that deep work that you need to do. And I'm still playing with the levers, and little by little, it's getting there.
Well, you really like this book. It's very in the same vein of what you're saying. I'll tell you one more thing that I've started doing is I'll batch these things. Like when I have follow-up emails or emails that I know I need to send, if I've learned about myself, and I bet a lot of other people are like this too, is if I have something in the back of my brain and like, oh, I have to remember to do this, it eats away at my like cognition, you know? So if I can just get it on a list that I'm going to deal with this later, then that part of my brain is freed up. So because I drive so much, I'll yell at Siri. I'll say, hey, Siri, put Rocky on my follow-up list. And then when it's time blocked to go follow up, I just bang through all of those notes that I've yelled at Siri in the car about.
And that's essentially what I do. I create tasks on my Google Calendar, same concept. And if I need to follow up, I'll just put that task and I'll put it in the appropriate time frame. So the one thing that I learned that was kind of big, a lot of times I would have time to write emails, but I didn't want to send them just yet. And so what I've learned to do now is delay my email sends. For example, if you're reaching out to a client or possibly a potential customer, you don't want to reach out to them Saturday morning at 10 a.m. You want them to get the email on a different day. So now before I would wait till the appropriate time to do it, now I just do them all and I schedule all the sends at a different time, along with things that I need. So Tuesday mornings is when all the podcasts release. And I used to have to sit down Tuesday morning and figure out all the social media. Now I do it days in advance. Tuesday morning at the time that I need to do it, my own email to me shows up and it's got all the social media, all the links, all the pictures, everything is right there. And then I can just crank through it. So I've learned to systematize and plan as much as I possibly can.
It's all about outsmarting myself is what I say, you know?
And that's very true. Any other great books as of recent or just in general?
So I'm very pro supporting women in their development and business and lifting each other up. So specifically, I think a lot of people have probably heard of Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill great, but there's a Think and Grow Rich for Women, which Sharon Lechter, who is co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is the author of. So specifically Think and Grow Rich for Women, for any women out there. It's a number one, it's a couch that is more kind of the way women's brains work differently, but also it's more updated. So a lot of the examples and the, collateral that they talk about, it's not railroad stuff anymore. It's actual kind of more 20th century stuff.
Sharon Lechter is behind a lot of those books, but she's never really come to the forefront as far. I don't know if that's on purpose or there was reason behind it. Do you know much about her?
I don't. So, through Aspiring Women Achieving More, this group that I started on Facebook, we do a book club and we read Think and Grow Rich for Women. And I sent a screenshot over Instagram of our group doing that. And, Sharon Lechter now follows me on Instagram, which is one of the proudest things in my life. It's a fangirl. Who I fangirl is very different from who other people fangirl. But I don't get a sense that it's on purpose, but it's kind of an accidental win, I think. Because I don't want to be a celebrity. Like I want to impact as many lives as possible, like she has. It's kind of like the perfect little sweet spot. If I can be Sharon Lechter when I grow up, I've won in a major way.
And she is actually the author behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Which a lot of people don't know. She is also, I guess and I don't know the exact things, but the Napoleon Hill Foundation, she's the one doing, because there's another book called Outwitting the Devil that she put out from Napoleon Hill. So she's done a lot in that. But I don't know her full backstory. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man Podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man Podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform.
You might really enjoy this Think and Grow Rich for Women because she kind of goes into it a little bit. So she was a multifamily investor, then went back to single family, and she's fascinating and brilliant. And I love seeing, especially in real estate, there's so few women, especially when you get into commercial real estate investing, the higher end apartment, multifamily stuff, we are underrepresented. And to see her really doing incredible things, like I clap loudly for all my girls doing big stuff.
And that was one of the things that I was going to talk about with you, is the fact that when you look at real estate, I think at the realtor level, it's probably, I don't know the exact stats, but there are considerable amount of women. But as you go up in real estate, especially as you said, into the large multifamily deals, I see it tends to be a very male dominated world. And it's funny because who's picking the apartment or who's buying the house in most cases?
Right.
It's the women. And so you've got these guys trying to figure out women's taste, which is just never going to happen. So great. It makes sense that women should be more involved in this space. And I see more and more women getting involved today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the more approachable type of real estate investing for women are the ones where a lot of women flip houses. You'll see a lot of women flipping houses or buying single family rentals. When you get into the kind of commercial grade investment stuff, the starting of funds, the private lending type stuff, that's all kind of finance focused, that still kind of tends to be an underrepresentation of women. So, we're trying to bang some tables and make sure women understand that this is, we're the way that women approach business, and, without overestimating or on average, I would say, Rocky, women have less bravado than men. I don't know if anybody would agree, maybe on average. So to look at a big spreadsheet where you're estimating costs, like that is something that I feel like if you take a different attitude, that's not one of, we're going to knock it out of the park and just kind of completely fabricate some stuff so that we can make it look good. There's a lot of, we should be in the world a little more of commercial real estate investing.
So I know a lot of people in the real estate space, and I know a lot of the inside stories. And I can tell you that there are quite a few large real estate investors out there who, if you ask them where the money is and where it's coming and going, would be absolutely clueless.
Yeah.
And that's a guy's way. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, they don't. There's a lot of that in the world of real estate, which is why so often real estate gets overpaid, because they will figure out a way to make it work instead of, hey, let's make sure the numbers actually work before we get into the deal.
So one thing I always tell people that I'm helping out get into real estate investing is, you can change the spreadsheet. You're not going to change the deal, So if you're not, this speaks very much to your profit first, and why I'm excited to speak on that specific to multifamily, It's, if you don't understand the dollars and cents, it's a black and white type of thing that you know where it's going or you don't. You have a plan or you don't, and you cannot manage what you do not measure.
And so when we run our deals, we always build margin at multiple levels. We build it at each point of the process. We build extra margin because what will go wrong, what can go wrong will go wrong. And so we build the margin and then we forget, you forget all the little stuff. And it's the little stuff that crushes you. $1,000 in just little stuff here and $1,000 in little stuff there. Oh, we forgot the dumpster. Oh, there's $700. And it starts multiplying very quickly. So by creating margin at every level, we know that all of that stuff falls into the margin. And we've covered it. We haven't forgotten about it. And that's why we're always profitable on all the deals. You started to talk about goals. And I know I've heard something interesting that you've talked about. How often do you review your goals?
I did it this morning. I do it on a weekly basis. So I learned something. I joined this mastermind group called GoBundance. They started a women's arm a couple years ago, and it's specifically, there's these 6 pillars of life that if you optimize them, you're living an incredible life. And that so speaks to me. And, one thing that I took away from goal setting from that group was this idea of you've got these gardens that you want to take care of in your life, these different areas that really matter to you, like my relationships and my health and my business and the big different areas. And if I can have a couple of goals per primary area in my life, then, I write them down weekly in my pretty little notebook and, keep track of how I've done on the year. So my goals, instead of work out 4 times a week, like 4 times a week times 50 weeks is 200 workouts. So I'm going to make, because the way that my brain works, Rocky, is if I only work out 3 times a week for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I'm like, forget it. I missed it. I messed up, But if I couch my goal such that it's 200 workouts per year rather than 4 workouts a week, then I've got this opportunity to catch up and be honest and keep a promise to myself. So I keep track in that way.
That's the one area that's always been surprising to me. It's like people need to learn to forgive themselves and keep going.
Yeah.
And I work out. So my original goal for workouts was 3 times a week with a stretch goal of 5 because I knew I couldn't always do 5. But by having the 3, I knew I could always get my 3 done and I scheduled them. So it was pretty easy to hit my goal. But I'm always shocked at the people who set a goal and you get 2/3 of the way there a couple weeks in a row and you give up. Like, why? Why don't you just keep going and either adjust the goal or it just amazes me that people give up so quickly.
I think, though, that there's some psychology to it. And I mean, I know for me, I will keep a promise to anyone else and sometimes not keep a promise to myself. So it's quite literally knowing you're going to keep a promise to yourself is self-respect. And I think very much that if you build up that muscle, if you set yourself up for success, to have that self-respect and set yourself up to win, why not hack something so that you can build on that,
And that was in the one book. I'm trying to remember who wrote it. It was a woman who wrote the book about I think the book went upstairs, the 4 personality types.
Oh, yeah.
Gretchen Rubin.
Yes.
And each personality type is different in who you will keep your agreement to. So some people won't keep an agreement to themselves. Some people won't keep an agreement to other people. And some people just won't keep agreements. Those are the rebels. And God help them and God help you if you have to deal with them. Because they don't care about the either side of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's understanding who you are, which goes back to where we started, which is thinking time. Who are you and how are you going to behave? And then how do you create the systems and processes that will psychologically keep you on track based on who you are.
Well, and one more thing about these patterns of all these books that I've had a chance to read, the pattern is there is only one right for you. There is no playbook on anything that you're doing that is the perfect way. It's just what is the perfect way for you.
And that's what we talk about. People ask, what's the perfect diet? The one you'll follow. What's the perfect workout? The one you'll do.
Yeah.
And that's literally what it comes down to. And that is very, very true. And we've had Tim Rhodes on from GoBundance in the past.
Yeah.
So I know Tim, and I know his charity group, One Life Fully Lived, and the work that they're doing. And all of these things are around creating that abundant life. I love his scorecard phenomena of how they essentially, for every person, they've got a scorecard. And that scorecard looks at how they're doing from their weight to their income to all of the other areas that they are tracking. And it's publicly available for the rest of the group to see how everyone is doing. So there's a high level of trust.
Well, and accountability, and authenticity, like I got to present, we call that the one sheet. The one sheet that has everything and how you're doing in your life, your weight, your net worth, all that stuff. And let me tell you, you never feel more naked and you never feel more seen and loved than when you're talking that stuff through, and where your successes are, what's easy for you, and where your failures are, and what you're digging into making better. Like there is, that's what love is to me. That's what friendship is to me, is like being totally seen and supported at the same time.
And everyone's got to find the group that's right for them to, nobody does anything alone. Everyone needs help, and it's finding the help that works for you and the climate and the type of group that works best for how you want to do things.
Absolutely.
So you're actually getting ready for a major life shift for yourself, right?
In about 63 days, we'll be announcing my retirement from my W-2 and moving solely into my real estate investing career. So it's very exciting.
What was it that drove that choice?
So this is actually a thing that I have worked. So my master's is economics. Like there's got to be a way to quantify this, right? So I would talk to, I hired a real estate coach like 3 or 4 years ago. And in so doing, a bunch of these guys, because I'm one of the only girls coming up with me, I would say, how do you know when it's time to quit your job? And everybody said, oh, well, we're doing these big syndications. I have this acquisition fee. I have this disposition fee. And when I have enough of those coming in, then I can quit. My thought is like, no, you kind of just signed up for another job. You're off of one treadmill and onto another. That is not what I want. And I'm a single mom of a 5-year-old. So I need a way far more concrete, like understanding and belief of what's going to be happening. So what I did is I looked for a tool that would kind of help me estimate what it is that I need. And one of my favorite things from Wealth Mastery, that Tony Robbins seminar, is this idea of a bunch of different ways to quantify financial freedom. So you can have just your mortgage paid for, and that's one level of financial freedom, or you can have all of your needs met, and that's a different level, or you can have the private jet and the whatever, and that's a different level. So if it just becomes a math problem then. If you have more passive income coming in than it costs you to live your life, by definition, you do not need a W-2 job. And I hit that level and I'm making the move. So it's a full-on retirement at the age of 40.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And my wife was at that as well. And I think that was her big aha, is realizing that she was one of a handful of people in the room that had the ability to walk away. Even though you have the ability to walk away, you still have to have something to walk to.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
It's a struggle.
Yeah.
You're giving up everything that you call yourself, in a sense, your identity, if you're that tied to it. Me, I'm not tied to it. She's more tied to it.
I feel like in America, so I have au pairs, like these girls who are basically on a foreign exchange student visa who live in my home and, care for my child, help me care for my child. And in Germany, for instance, you do not introduce yourself as, hi, I'm Mandy, I'm a medical device rep, or hi. You are not so tied to your work in the way we are in America. So I mean, that was kind of an eye opener too. And who are you if you haven't done that thinking time on figuring out who you are without just this label that's been kind of prescribed to you?
In Germany at 5:00, they stop working. Like they just hang up the phone. They like, even if there's something that needs to be done, that's 2 minutes.
Yeah. That
would save everyone an hour. They just leave.
Yeah.
It's a whole different way of life. I don't know which is better. There has to be some balance. They seem to be extreme on one side. We seem to be extreme on the other.
But I'll tell you what, this book, the one that I was talking about, A World Without Email. I mean, there's ways to, I feel strongly that setting expectation for this, he keeps calling it the hyperactive hive mind. That if you can't get a control of all of the stuff that's going on in the whack-a-mole that we play with our lives, you're not going to get deep work done. And I think that if I'm quitting at 5 idea is kind of in support of, I'm going to go have full rest and relaxation. And, the idea of they take lunch as their biggest meal. Like many times they'll take long walks after lunch, and that incorporates this thinking time idea. So I don't know, but I'm in support of Germany.
I have to go experience it. It's one of the things on the list.
I love it.
To go see what it's like. And yeah, every culture does things vastly different. And so I've just recently, for whatever reason, I think there's been some people who've gone from the US to Germany to work on things. And it's just interesting to hear how they think about things differently, because they're seeing that different perspective and they're coming at it with a newbie mind. Like, oh my God, this is like totally different than I can imagine. It's funny because in Germany and in a lot of Europe, your kitchen doesn't stay with the house. Like they take the cabinets with them, which is like mind blowing. It's just a different way of living life.
Right. I guess it's a piece of furniture hanging on the wall.
It's a piece of furniture hanging on the wall, I guess. I love my kitchen. I'm going to take it to the next place. Very, very interesting. So you, as part of leaving, you are also launching your new book. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So because I started this group on Facebook to basically for women to lift each other up and clap loudly for each other, provide accountability, and just a source of positivity in our days. This Aspiring Women Achieving More. I was asked to write a chapter in a multi-author book called Aspire Women Finding Their Purpose. And that is set to launch on April 30th. So I am just so excited to get to share a little bit of, how I figured me out a little bit in hopes that it might help other women figure themselves out.
So some quick tips out of the book. How do you figure you out? What was it that you were able to do?
So I mean, I feel like I kind of end the chapter with some like actionable ideas. I think the biggest thing is, especially women who are high performing, this idea, like we were probably like, I mean, I don't know, I was a really good student. I know lots of high performing women that were like perfect little girls, and you always raise your hand and you always follow the rules. And to go do anything that might be perceived as a failure or not perfect is so like scary to so many women. And if you are going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to go off into this world of real estate investing, which is my chosen entrepreneurship field, that you're going to mess up. And if you don't embrace that, if you're going to try to be perfect by everybody else's yardstick in the whole world, there are over 7 billion people, Rocky. You are never going to, statistically speaking, you are never going to be perfect by every single human's standard. But if you get really certain of what you want, what you need, just tune inward, get quiet, figure that out, you can be perfect, for lack of a better word, by whatever your yardstick is. So, it all comes down to understanding who you are and what your needs are.
And that's not something most people take the time to do.
I didn't do it until I was 35. I mean, I had a boss who was asking me to do something that, to find patients in a way that I thought was not okay. And it turns out it wasn't. And I had this stress pukes and I thought I was losing hair. And I mean, just if you don't pay attention to your emotional, internal, self, then it will come out in a physical way. I firmly believe that. And mine was lost hair and stress pukes. So, hopefully this idea of you can figure out what is most important to you before you start stress puking, then that's probably more ideal than waiting until your body makes you pay attention.
And I think that's part of what sickness is a lot of times, is just your body telling you, hey, you're out of sync and I'm going to show you that you're out of sync.
Yeah.
Too often we take a pill instead of understanding, hey, why are we out of sync and what do I need to do to get back in sync? And so we cover up the messages that our body is telling us instead of doing something about it. So how you've talked a lot about the fact that you're in real estate. How did you get involved with real estate? What started that whole process?
Yeah. So I was so both my parents are entrepreneurs. My dad owns these hard assets. I remember being 19 years old at a party in college, and one of my friends who was hosting the party at this house that she lived in explained that her dad owned the house and she was renting out the rooms to our friends. And I'm like, you get to keep that money then? That's the best idea I've ever heard. So 19 years old, it was a seed planted. And then through my graduate school in economics, I worked on the floor of the Board of Trade, and I saw guys lose millions in a blink of an eye, So this idea of hard assets stayed in my brain, but I didn't start buying anything until 2016. January of 2016 was my first purchase. And coincidentally, my son was born February of 2016. So, I guess when the universe sent me this message that, this is not a dress rehearsal, because I had a legacy now to form for my son, I have finally started taking action and making purchases in the world of investing in real estate.
And it sounds like you've gone up considerably from where you started. You've really kind of put pedal to the metal on this.
The thing is, like Tony Robbins says, I feel like anything that you're doing is 80% the mindset, 80% the where your brain is at, and 20% the mechanics. And I spent 19 to 35 figuring out how to be perfect, like a perfect little girl on these mechanics. And I never made a stinking move. And the moment you realize that making a move, you don't die after this thing you're scared of. And oh my gosh, not only did I not die, that cash flows $1,000 a month that I don't work for. The whole world opens up, and the things that were once scary are now acceptable, risk reward. And it's something that I see a lot of, especially new women real estate investors really struggle with. This idea of if I'm not perfect, I don't know how to not be perfect. And you won't be.
And I've heard it say, if there was a list of requirements, a guy will go forward when he hits 60%. Women need to hit 100% to move forward. And that's probably a message that needs to get out that says, if you've got 60%, move forward. If you've got 80%, pedal to the metal, because you'll figure out the other 20. You've got the majority underneath your belt. You're never going to have 100%. And so you've got to take action as soon as possible.
So it's not avoidance that extinguishes fear. It's action that extinguishes fear. And I also think, one thing that I work with people in getting started investing, I'm coaching, this idea of, it's a Stoic philosophy idea. that if you just completely understand what the downside is, just go all the way down the rabbit hole. All right, what is the worst case scenario if this happens? And this is actually, a thought process I had for myself. Like, all right, leaving my day job, sure, my needs are met by my passive income, but what is the worst case scenario if it doesn't work out? Well, you know what the worst case scenario is? I just go find another job. No big deal. I just go do what I've been doing. So, I mean, if you can get all the way comfortable with what is the worst case scenario, mitigate some of that risk somehow, because you usually can, then it makes it so much easier to take that scary step.
And I'm going to tell you the other side of scary that I hear a lot, especially at times like this when we hit the economy on a downswing, is that people in their late 40s and early 50s lose their job. And it's very difficult if they lose their confidence to get back up on the horse. And it's not hard to lose your confidence because most of corporate is there to beat you down, make you feel like, oh, we're doing a favor by employing you. The reality is you're doing them a favor by being employed if you're adding value and you're doing a good job, because finding good people is hard and it's a constant tug of war, unfortunately. And they're taught the corporate language to hold you down so that they don't have to pay you more. It's a game. Learn to play the game.
Well, the minute I realized that, my company's goal, they were beholden to the shareholders, not to me as their employee, right? So they need to maximize my work output and pay me just enough to keep me happy, but not so much that they're overpaying me. So the only way I'm going to maximize what it is that I'm going to earn is if I'm out there doing it for myself. And this idea of job security, it's so backwards. Like, once you realize that if you take on all of this quote unquote risk, being in charge of your fate as an entrepreneur, then you're the one in charge. Like, that is how you can have job security. Because at any given point, like I could be replaced any moment in a day job, because they just say, all right, we don't want girls with brown hair anymore, gone. Well, obviously that won't happen, but you know what I mean? Like, the only way to have actual job security is to be the one in charge of it.
I always thought that people who worked in a company were beholden to shareholders. They're not. Only the handful of people at the top are beholden to shareholders. Yeah. Everybody else is beholden to the person above them. And even if that person's being foolish, the people below them will be beholden to foolish. And it just creates an absolute mess. And in most companies, it's that middle layer that's an absolute disaster. The top's got it and they've got a vision, and the bottom kind of gets it, but the people in the middle make it difficult for everybody else.
I can agree with that.
And pretty soon you will be free to enjoy life on your own terms. So we always like to get people to take action, and we've kind of been talking a lot about that today. What is an action step people can take this week to move forward? So when I work with people, the very first exercise that we do is we figure out, like I talked a little bit about knowing where your North Star is. So no matter what, let's say if I'm going to get in my car and I want to drive from Chicago where I'm at to Las Vegas, or I want to drive from Chicago to New York City, I have to make that decision where I'm going. I have to understand my North Star, and then I can punch it into Google Maps and it helps me figure out when and how to pivot and what turns to make. So to take that analogy a step further, the next right step is figure out what that end in mind is. What is your North Star that you are running after? And then all you need to do is figure out the next right step to get you in that direction. So if I'm going to Las Vegas from Chicago, Google Maps just tells me drive 500 feet, turn left. All you got to pay attention to is the drive 500 feet, turn left, and then the next step will present itself. And it will. And here's the thing. You can't steer until you're moving.
Yes. Yeah.
So you got to get moving, make the choice, take the step, and then continue to steer from there, even if you have to make a U-turn.
Well, what's that analogy? Planes are off course 98% of the time, but they get where they're going. Yeah, if you embrace that idea that again, you're not perfect. You will not be perfect.
That is so, so true. And we will be off course throughout most of life. But at the end, if we keep course correcting and taking those actions, we will end up where we want to be. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Only paying attention to the next right step.
Then you don't worry about everything else, right?
You can't. Like, it doesn't make sense to worry about things outside of your control. I mean, abundance is everywhere. It's only, your life is only not abundant if you block it. Abundance is all around us.
You just need to take the next right step towards it. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oof, this one is so clear to me that I have a choice. That the path that was prescribed to me as this perfect little girl, which was well-meaning in most cases, but I mean, you are in control of where your life goes, period.
Parents would rather you be safe than successful.
That's true.
And so they put you on the safe path so that everything will be okay, but it's not necessarily the best path. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Man, I feel like it's all about this going inward. It's all about figuring out what is important to you. And I mean, I don't have a lot of regrets in life at all, but I chose to not study abroad in undergrad because it would have cost Rocky $5,000. And I mean, when it's an experience, run directly after it, because anything that will become a memory is so worth it. Anything that's a thing, not worth it.
And it's funny, memories improve, things deteriorate.
Exactly.
And so the trip you take will always grow in fondness. That latest BMW or Mercedes will get old and rusty in time.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll still be paying for it. If people would like to find you, the book, connect, what is the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is on my website, mandymcallister.com. I kind of have that as a catch-all for everything. You can find things on aspiring women, achieving more. You can find my investment firm, Good Fortune Capital, and we'll have some stuff on the coaching that we do, the group coaching, and also the book links.
Awesome. I will put all of that in the show notes to make it easy for people to find you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
I want to encourage you to take that first step. Now, don't jump off a cliff. Just take a small, safe step forward to trying something new. While you're thinking about it, read a bunch of books. They'll help you better understand the mistakes that others made so that you don't have to. Did you hear how many books that Mandy reads? She probably has me beat by about double. This week's action step: what's your North Star? Where are you going? And then what's the next right step to get you in that direction? That's so simple. Just one star, one step. Finding your North Star is life-changing. You start to live in alignment with who you are meant to be. It really is amazing. Spend the time thinking to figure out what that is. You need to also ask those around you for help. You can't see your superpowers like others do, so create the conversations. Mandy and I both walked away from six-figure jobs to do what we love. I wish I had done it sooner. Mandy's part of a mastermind, Go Abundance. We've had Tim Rode on. That also helps her get ahead. I know that the mastermind I belong to, Iron Sharpens Iron, has helped me dramatically to take next steps and to hold me accountable. Next week, we have an amazing episode. Alan Weiss is on to talk about Your Legacy Is Now. He shares his journey, and he's got a lot of wisdom to share. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, can you leave a rating and review? Because it helps me to secure better guests for you. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.